Hey guys, how is it going? I'm so happy to have you here for another video. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mo, and on this channel we have super casual chit chats. Basically, I like to just sit down with my camera and pretend like I'm talking to a friend about anything I'm going through on any given day. So that's basically what we do here. Apologies if there's noise in the background. Somebody's mowing the lawn out there, so I don't know if that comes through, but yeah, I'm super happy to have you on another video. Today, I want to talk about overall anxiety and anxiety and tension and just contracted energy, or feeling any sort of tension within the body. And this is something that I've been dealing with particularly for the past couple of weeks, but I think especially it really came up today. And I wanted to just sit up and talk about what I've learned about that and how to actually deal with that. Because I think this is something that we all go through, you know what I mean? Some people more than others. Obviously there's the really extreme side of things, which is you have panic attacks or intense anxiety disorders. I have had really extreme cases in the past. I'm a lot better now. And also there's, kind of the lighter side of things, which I think everyone experiences on, a day-to-day basis, which is just basic anxiety, intrusive thoughts, things that tend to come up. So I kind of want to share what I've learned. One thing I want to say is I've been diagnosed with so many different mental disorders, and I've really gone deep within the standard institution of diagnosis and medication and standard Western healing principles, I guess. So I'm very familiar with that sort of avenue. And first of all, I'm not a medical professional and I'm not giving advice. I'm just speaking from my experience like I would to any friend about, kind of what I've learned and what I've gone through. And I think, definitely if you're in an extreme sort of situation, medication and, professional and more aggressive help can certainly be helpful. But for me, that's not the thing that actually healed the root of the issue and actually solved it long-term for me. It in some sense helped me get on the right path in the right direction to kind of mitigate some of the things initially. But I think it can also be very dangerous. I was put on a lot of medications that actually made things worse. So, all this to say that I think so much of, actually healing these things is really going within ourselves and understanding what the root of the issue is, you know what I mean? And I think obviously the society we live in contributes to so much of this. We're bombarded with so many different things. And I think a lot of, the way we live is by definition very unnatural. So I'm certain that the way we live definitely contributes to that. But with that being said, I think with the knowledge that we learn about ourselves and how we operate, we can definitely do a lot and pull a lot of strings to set up systems and processes for us to actually thrive in this world. Because like I said, many years ago, I could not even sit here and talk to you about this today, but I've spent probably the past, 6 or 7 years really going deep into why I was feeling these things and why it was so hard for me to thrive in society, which I don't think is, a strange thing. Like I said, society, I think, can make us sick in so many ways, but that doesn't mean that we're stuck and we're stagnant, because we do have a lot of control, over what we put into our minds, how we're taking care of ourselves, and really just our perspectives on the world too, I think, can really play a role in this. And that's not really what I want to get into specifically. What I wanted to talk about specifically was how anxiety shows up in the body and what we can do about that. Because one of the things I've noticed is and let me back up. So the past couple of weeks, I've been dealing with a lot of very intense emotional things that have been coming up. It's been a really profound season of shadow work. This year in and of itself is has been my second dark night of the soul, if you want to call it. I've experienced a lot of very heavy sort of childhood traumas that I haven't experienced in quite a few years, and it's been really intense. But I will say I've been doing a lot better to handle it the second time, because I kind of know what's going on and I can kind of hold myself through that. And I think that really is the key. Once you're aware of maybe these tendencies that you do have, and you can kind of give yourself grace, it's a lot easier to then look at it and be okay, I understand that this is happening. I understand that I do have a tendency to, feel really stressed about these things or get really worked up about these things. I think understanding your triggers specifically can be really helpful, so you can kind of hold yourself through those processes. But yeah, to backtrack a little bit, I've been dealing with a lot of things, and trying to work through them. in the midst of having a lot of things to do in like my personal life, so being very busy. And what had happened is things that I really did need to like sit with and actually work through and process did not get dealt with because I was busy doing other things and, you know, living our day-to-day life, which I think so many of us do. And something that I noticed in the past few days is like a lot of like pain and tension in my chest, in my stomach, knots in my back that I haven't really ever had like this. And I was like, what is happening? What is going on? And there was nothing like, it took me by surprise for a minute. But as I sort of like sat with that and really had to like, you know, kind of sit and breathe into it and lean into what I was actually feeling, I realized that there were a bunch of things bubbling up. And because I was so busy, I had to just keep stuffing them down and like not dealing with them. And when we do that, like, energy gets stored, like your emotions are energy, like that's movement. And so if we're not doing things to release them, if we're not allowing them to come up and process and actually exit our system, they stay there and they manifest as like health issues and, you know, overall just like stress and pain in the body. And stress in and of itself is the killer, you know what I mean? Like it's one of the most harmful things we can do for ourselves. So I think like it's just so important. And I like within the society that we live in, I know that everyone has, you know, busy schedules and everyone has a lot going on and there's so many things we have to do to survive, but it just made me realize the importance of actually integrating healing on like a daily basis. Because I think one of the things we can fall into, and I know I've fallen into, is like thinking that there's nothing I already worked through things, like I don't have to process this, I've already dealt with it. But the way it works is like we can sometimes have to heal through things like multiple times and in multiple different ways. Like it's a very layered process to, you know, move through, you know, these seasons with yourself and understand your emotions and understand how you're feeling. And I think sometimes for me too, if I'm getting into a place where I'm like being hyper efficient, you know, getting caught up in the world of work and productivity, like emotions can almost be an annoyance, you know what I mean? Like I think when you're so wrapped up in that very like left brain sort of mentality, like you almost disregard your emotions and almost don't treat yourself like a human, because it's not, your emotions are inefficient, they're unproductive. And so if it's not moving you closer to your goals, if it's not productive, if it's not what your boss wants, like you almost don't allow yourself to feel those things. And I think we can all sort of fall into that in times, because that's subconsciously just kind of what, you know, the mindset that's sort of put on us is like your emotions aren't valid and they're actually an annoyance, and just shut it down and keep doing your job, keep going through the motions, you know what I mean? And I think that's obviously, I don't think that's a healthy thing. And I think it's interesting because ironically, the more we actually give ourselves space to feel these emotions and allow things to come up, we are actually more efficient at the things that we want to do. And that's really what it made me realize is, you know, the past few days, I haven't been nearly as productive as I should be because of all of the anxiety and tension and contraction that I was feeling. And then it sort of feeds into the cycle, because now you're like, well, now I'm not being productive and I'm not getting these things done. And so then it, you know, you fall into the cycle of feeling worse about yourself. And in the end, if you just given yourself space and time to actually just sit and feel what you're feeling and process what you're feeling and journal, like dump things, you know, dump your emotions on paper, do some breath work, do some meditation, like go for a walk and like cry, allow yourself to feel, you know what I mean? Like, I think it can be not easy, but almost easy to just like stuff things down and pretend that they don't exist. But like, they very much do exist, and we all know that. And you can avoid things for a certain period of time, but eventually those things are going to come back up and they're going to be way worse than they were initially. You know what I mean? And so I just like urge you to kind of to remember that you are a human being first and foremost. You're not a robot. And second of all, your emotions are meaningful and they hold weight. They're not nothing. You deserve to actually allow them to come up and to feel what you're feeling and to process them and to deal with them, even if that's only for the sake, like even if we're coming from a productive mindset, you know what I mean? Like we want to be as efficient as possible in the world and we want to show up as the best version of ourselves. Like stuffing down your emotions would by definition be inefficient, you know what I mean? Because it's not, those things have to be dealt with one way or another. Like, that's just the way people operate, you know what I mean? So I just urge you to make sure that you value yourself enough and, you know, value your systems and processes of, you know, showing up as the best version of yourself, to actually take time and allow yourself to feel things and to feel the pain too. I think that's another thing, is like, sometimes it's not even just that we're busy or we feel like we're not worthy to feel the things. Sometimes those things are very hard to feel, and that's, you know, that's really our minds, our ego trying to protect us, you know, from that pain. One of the things, to get a little bit vulnerable, like one of the big lessons that I've been dealing with recently is like the fear of abandonment and the fear of rejection. And so that's been getting triggered in my life. Like, it's been triggering me. Different situations have triggered me recently and brought that wound back up. And instead of dealing with it and facing it and healing it and allowing, you know, those emotions to come up and feel what I'm feeling, I did the opposite. I ran from it, and I shut it down, and I, buried my head in work and did other things. So I think that can be another aspect too, is like, sometimes the things that are coming up are not going to be super pleasant. But one thing I learned after actually having to like sit and do the shadow work in the past, you know, really today and yesterday, and actually allow those things to come up so I could release a lot of that tension in my body, was that it was way worse to stuff it down, because it caused me so much more pain, because it was just circulating and it was causing me tension and pain, and it wasn't released, you know what I mean? And even though there was a purging of emotion and it was hard to feel those things and to sit in that feeling of, you know, abandonment and rejection, things that were triggered in childhood, like, even though those were hard emotions to face and to confront and to actually feel, they actually dissipated very, very quickly. So even though like we can do it as a way to sort of avoid pain and try to protect ourselves, like, we actually end up doing ourselves more of a disservice, because those things still exist within us. It's still going to cause us pain. It just might be a different type of pain, if that makes sense. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. Just a reminder to give yourself love and allow these things to come up and allow yourself to process whatever it is that you need to process. If you're ever feeling anxiety or tension in your body, like, it is a messenger. There's something there that's going on. And it could be a number of things. And healing is not a linear journey. We're always doing it. We're always learning and expanding and experiencing. But yeah, I hope this was helpful insight. I love you guys so much. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you're new, I hope that you stick around for more. I love you so much. Bye-bye.